This is a yellowfin tuna. It can swim 50 miles an hour, dive 4,000 feet deep, and grow to be over 400 pounds. This, on the other hand, is a human. More specifically, it's me, 60 feet deep. I can neither swim 50 miles an hour nor dive to 4,000 feet. But what I lack in strength and speed, I make up for with the fact that I'm armed with a brand new loaded spear gun that costs over $2,000. I don't know it yet, but not only are one of these yellowfin tuna going to yank my new expensive spear gun right out of my hands, it's going to drag me down with it when I get tangled in the line.
Want to be underwater, attached to a tuna.
Well, what you do is you have a float.
Right.
And so after you shoot and you spear a big fish like a tuna, it's not dragging you, it's dragging the float.
This is what Joe Rogan and Ben Greenfield are talking about. You can see that the spear detaches from the spear gun and instead is connected to two big floats, which the tuna proceeds to submerge as it dives down. However, with that yellowfin that I get tangled with, because I don't have a float attached to my spear gun, I am no different than those two floats. And the thing is, I know better. This is me a few weeks ago, diving with that very same spear gun I shot the yellowfin with. And this is a school of dogtooth tuna. Because my gun is rigged with a reel rather than floats, the tuna bolted directly deep to the bottom of the ocean where it got tangled. Not only was it too deep to dive to untangle the line, but the current was too strong to even swim against it. Luckily, I was able to attach my gun to my buddy's float before it was ripped from my hands. But no matter how hard we tried to untangle it from the surface,
so leave the slack in the water, but pull the float up.
It wouldn't budge.
Okay, pergi ke pelampung. Oh, this one's tangled deep.
Until finally,
God damn it.
The spear ripped through the fish's flesh, and it was lost forever. Nothing is more disappointing than this. It's not that you can't spear a tuna with a reel, rather than a float. It's just more difficult. For instance, it reminded me of a similar, more dangerous situation a few years ago. After I speared another dogtooth tuna with another reel gun, surprise, surprise, it got tangled on the seafloor again. And when my buddy dove down more than 100 feet deep to untangle it, the water pressure squeezed his lungs so hard it caused him to cough up blood. In the end, we got the fish, or at least most of it. But coughing up blood from a lung squeeze is a serious injury that was definitely not worth it. Speaking of lung squeezes, let's talk about water pressure, because it's relevant to that yellowfin. You know how your ears hurt on an airplane or when you go to the bottom of a swimming pool? Well, this is the deepest freediver on Earth, Alexei Molchanov. And right now, he's on his way down to 446 feet deep. Instead of wearing a normal dive mask, he's wearing a nose clip. Throughout his dive, he uses that nose clip to constantly push air from his cheeks into his eardrums to equalize the pressure. If he didn't, not only would it be excruciatingly painful, he would rupture his eardrums. But because my hands are busy untangling myself from this tuna, I'm not able to pinch my nose to equalize my ears as it pulls me down. And in this moment, my adrenaline is pumping.
Quick loan up to 20,000 kit. Licensed DOD SSE.
Level is cash.
Let's go back to that dogtooth tuna that pulled the floats under real quick. Part of the appeal of spearfishing is the adrenaline. Nothing compares. And this was the fish of a lifetime, one of the most exciting moments of my entire life. It's moments like these that make spearfishing so amazing. But it comes at a cost.
G'day, legend. Welcome to the Noob Spirit Podcast. Today we're off to Indonesia to chat with aquatic apes Lenny Logsdale. I think the spearing world and even probably maybe the YouTube world fall in love with big fish and stuff like that. But talk to me about what you're passionate about. What do you like doing when you go out spearing?
I love going after big doggies. That's my favorite thing.
Is it really? Does it just take over?
Your level of your threshold of excitement and what like when you first start spearing, you spear whatever fish and it's the coolest thing in the world and the biggest thing you've ever seen in your life, and it's so exciting, and that threshold constantly changes and changes and changes. And then, at least in my experience, when you start going after those bigger ones, it's less exciting than what was once normal spearfishing for you. I don't know if that's
It's an honest answer. I do think it's a shame. Like, do you still appreciate shooting dinner? Like, I remember watching one of your earlier vids and you can smash like a surgeon fish or something like that.
And here comes dinner.
And you cooked that up and it looked like a really nice meal. Does that still appeal to you, that stuff as well?
It's funny you said that, because just yesterday I was out spearfishing and there was basically nothing around, and I ended up spearing a good sized surgeon fish, which we're going to cook this evening. And it was for that reason. Like, I just hadn't had one in a while, and I was like, I used to eat these things all the time. It's still a good fish.
But if the thumbnail of this very YouTube video that you're watching right now was titled, "I didn't see any cool fish around, so I just speared a little surgeon fish," you probably wouldn't have clicked on it. According to neuroscientist Andrew Huberman, our hunter-gatherer DNA makes humans chemically wired to be addicted to the excitement of spearfishing.
And we can take this back to our evolutionary adaptive scenario where you are out there looking for water, looking for food. Not every trail, not every pursuit, not every hunch about where the animals will be, where the food will be, where the berries will be. Not every single one of those played out. There's something called dopamine reward prediction error. When we expect something to happen, we are highly motivated to pursue it. If it happens, great. We get the reward. The reward comes in various chemical forms, including dopamine. And we are more likely to engage in that behavior again. This is the basis of casino gambling. This is how they keep you going back again and again and again, even though on average, the house really does win. You can transplant that example to any number of different pleasureful activities. And almost inevitably, it's because there's a intermittent schedule by which dopamine sometimes arrives, sometimes a little bit, sometimes a lot, sometimes a medium amount.
But for me, a YouTuber, it goes beyond that. Big wave surfers famously talk about how videos of them wiping out on giant waves and almost dying are likely to garner more views online than clips of them successfully riding those exact same waves. And I've experienced the same thing.
Like, the best fish I ever got was a 60-kilo doggy. It was a perfect headshot. And I had like a whole doggy series from last year. I think it might have been 5 videos, and that one got the fewest amount of views. The best fish, like everything went perfectly. Like, people want to see when I spear a little one and then look to the left and see a giant one, and then I'm like, oh,
yeah.
Like, it's funnier. I get it. It's a more interesting story than like, I went down and did this perfectly, and that's what happened.
Yeah.
Not to say you should do stupid things to make the video better, but like, include them when you inevitably do stupid things. At least that's what I did.
And so, because here on YouTube, more views equals more money, not only is there a chemically addictive incentive to chase bigger and more exciting fish, for me, there's a financial incentive as well. Speaking of which, I want to thank the sponsor of today's video, Raid Shadow Legends. You've probably heard of this game before, and that's for good reason. It's a really great game with lots of powerful champions, challenging PvE bosses, and tactical PvP content. But there's more than just that. I'm on a fishing trip right now, looking for big dogtooth tuna. And on trips like these, it often takes multiple days of travel to get to some of the most remote parts of Indonesia. Right now, I'm currently sitting in a hotel room, waiting to board one of 9 flights. My point is, in these sorts of places, you have a lot of downtime sitting on boats, planes, backs of trucks, airports, and sort of just hanging around waiting to dive. And I've spent a good amount of that time on this trip getting extremely addicted to playing Raid Shadow Legends. This is a clip of me showing the game off to some of the kids just yesterday on one of the islands. Anyways, you know the game Kiss, Marry, Kill? Well, Raid asked me to select 3 of their 750 champions and rate them. And so I would kiss Coldheart for obvious reasons. She has really big personality traits. I'd marry Rule the Huntmaster because he kind of reminds me of a Dogtooth Tuna, and I love Dogtooth Tuna. And I'd kill Vizier Ovelis because he also kind of reminds me of a tuna. Anyways, this October, Raid has a special Halloween event. If you download Raid Shadow Legends using the links below, copy your in-game player ID, and then head over to raidyard.plarium.com from October 15th to November 10th, grab a shovel, pick a grave, and start digging for a chance to dig up some amazing in-game items and even real-life prizes, ranging from epic and legendary Halloween-themed Raid champions to Amazon gift cards with a total value of over $20,000. So hit the link below, or just scan the code on the screen here or here to get a free starter pack with a bunch of in-game loot. And thanks again to Raid for sponsoring this video. I really appreciate it. With a population of over 270 million people, Indonesia is the 5th largest country on Earth. And because it's made up of over 17,000 small, remote islands, I'd be willing to bet that there are more people making a living as fishermen here in Indonesia than anywhere else in the world. One of those people is my buddy Kadir. Born and raised in a fishing village in the north of Bali, his dad is a fisherman, his granddad was a fisherman, and pretty much everyone in his community are fishermen. But Kadir is different. Instead of line fishing like everyone else, he spent years honing his diving skills and now exclusively catches fish with a spear gun. Because of this, he often outcatches his peers who are stuck on the boat, holding a piece of string, hoping for a bite. However, when it comes to yellowfin tuna, the line fishermen outfish him by far. That's because yellowfin generally prefer depths that are out of range of freedivers. More tuna are caught in Indonesia than any other country on Earth, but unfortunately, we rarely get an opportunity to spear them. Speaking of which, before we get into what happened with that tuna, let's go back in time to a different day fishing with Kadir last week. Flying fish don't actually have wings. Instead, they've evolved to have extremely long pectoral fins that act as a glider, and they're able to glide over 1,000 feet at a time. Basically, when they don't glide, they get hunted by fish. And when they do glide, they get hunted by birds. And because flying fish spend most of their time near the surface, one of their main predators, mahi-mahi, do as well. More often than not, the oceans here in Bali are full of mahi-mahi. One of which Kadir has just speared, and its curious friends are still hanging around. When this little plastic pipe lands in the water after I throw it, it looks like a flying fish ending its flight. And this mahi's curiosity gets the better of it. While the fish frantically darts around, I dive down to grab that little plastic pipe before it sinks too deep. My shot placement isn't very good. This is the benefit of using a reel rather than a float. Because I'm able to loosen the reel and allow the fish to swim around as much as it wants without putting any pressure on the wound, making it less likely that the fish will tear itself off the spear. Most of the mahi I've ever caught have been no more than just a few feet deep. Even after spearing them, they generally stay pretty close to the surface. Combine that with the fact that they aren't nearly as strong as a tuna, it makes a lot of sense to spear them without a float. If a mahi has a big hump on its forehead, like this, it means that it's a male. Females, on the other hand, have a much more rounded forehead, like the one that Kadir just speared. Generally, when you see a school of mahi, there's one big male bull that's significantly larger than the rest of the school, which Kadir and I both see here. But it swims between us, which means that if either of us pulls the trigger, we might spear each other in the process. So we wait until it swims past and both take a shot. Because of the weird angle, Kadir misses, and my shot placement is very high. Some reports online have said that male and female mahi actually mate for life. I'm not sure how true that is, but after I loosened my reel to let the fish swim around, it did something that actually made me regret pulling the trigger.
Ang kape ng tunay na madiskarte. Blend 45.
It tried to rejoin its school. Probably hoping against hope that it could carry on with its life as if nothing had ever happened. And in this moment, I wish the same thing. But it's too late for that now. With a second spear in the fish, I pull it up more aggressively in order to end its suffering as quickly as possible. Because mahi-mahi are able to grow so fast and reproduce so quickly, they're one of the most sustainable fish to hunt, which honestly isn't that difficult. Because their big square bodies present an easy target. Wahoo, on the other hand, are much more challenging. Because their bodies are long and thin, and their flesh is very soft, and they can swim over 60 miles an hour, unless you place a solid shot into the fish, it will likely rip a hole through its own flesh in order to escape. For a commercial fisherman like Kadir, wahoo are the most valuable fish to sell, even more so than yellowfin tuna. However, for him, it's even more challenging, because if there's a giant spear wound through the body of the fish, he only gets half price for it at the market. And so he needs to get a perfect headshot every time. At the other end of the spectrum is this fish, tripletail. They've evolved to have extremely thick and sharp scales. My theory is that because they have such a dense natural coat of armor, they don't need to be nearly as wary as their softer wahoo neighbors. Generally, these fish will swim right up to your face, so close that the biggest challenge is placing a good shot without being able to completely stretch out your arm. Although their scales are really thick, they obviously didn't evolve to deflect giant metal spears. In Indonesian, they're called kerapu rumpon, which means fad grouper, although they aren't actually in the grouper family. Because they're so curious, getting two of them with one shot is pretty easy. Well, maybe not for me, but it is easy for Kadir. Which brings us to today. Every once in a while, for whatever reason, the tuna come to the shallows. When Kadir texted me the night before saying that the tuna are finally back, I stayed up late to rig my big tuna gun, including floats, and left at 4 a.m. the next morning. Just like last week, there are tons of mahi swimming around in the water here, which Kadir wastes no time in spearing. You see this giant forehead on the fish? Well, that's the big